Okay, today is 7th of August, and we continue with the Khandha Samyutta. Now, today we come to 22.89. This sutta is quite interesting and a bit amusing. On one occasion, a number of elder monks were dwelling at Kosambi in Gosita's park. On that occasion, the Venerable Khemaka was living at Jujubi Tree Park, sick, afflicted, gravely ill. Then in the evening, those elder monks emerged from seclusion and addressed the Venerable Dasaka thus: "Come, friend Dasaka, approach the monk Khemaka and say to him, the elders say to you, friend Khemaka, we hope that you are bearing up, friend. We hope that you are getting better. We hope that your painful feelings are subsiding and not increasing, and that their subsiding, not their increase, is to be discerned." "Yes, friends," the Venerable Dasaka replied, and he approached the Venerable Khemaka and delivered his message. Stop here for a moment. So, the elder monks, they sent this, must be a junior monk, Venerable Dasaka, to go and send their greetings to the Venerable Khemaka. The Venerable Khemaka answered, "I am not bearing up, friend. I am not getting better. Strong, painful feelings are increasing in me, not subsiding, and the increase, not their subsiding, is to be discerned." Then the Venerable Dasaka approached the elder monks and reported what the Venerable Khemaka had said. They told him, "Come, friend Dasaka, approach the monk Khemaka and say to him, the elders say to you, friend Khemaka, these 5 aggregates of attachment, friend, have been spoken of by the Blessed One, that is, the form or body aggregate of attachment, the feeling aggregate of attachment, the perception aggregate of perception of attachment, the volition aggregate of attachment, the consciousness aggregate of attachment. Does the Venerable Khemaka regard anything as self or as belonging to self among these 5 aggregates of attachment?" "Yes, friends," the Venerable Dasaka replied, and he approached the Venerable Khemaka and delivered his message. The Venerable Khemaka replied, "These 5 aggregates of attachment have been spoken of by the Blessed One, that is, the body aggregate of attachment, perception, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness aggregates of attachment. Among these 5 aggregates of attachment, I do not regard anything as self or as belonging to self." Then the Venerable Dasaka approached the elder bhikkhus, elder monks, and reported what the Venerable Khemaka had said. They replied, "Come, friend Dasaka, approach the monk Khemaka and say to him, the elders say to you, friend Khemaka, these 5 aggregates subject to clinging, friend, have been spoken of by the Blessed One, that is, the body aggregate of attachment, the feeling, perception, volition, consciousness aggregate of attachment. If the Venerable Khemaka does not regard anything among these 5 aggregates subject to clinging as self or as belonging to self, then he is an Arahant, one whose asavas are destroyed." Stop here for a moment. The Venerable Khemaka, he says, he does not regard the aggregates as self or as belonging to self. So they asked him whether he was an Arahant. Not necessarily that he should be an Arahant. He can be a Sotapanna if he has discarded this. If he is a Sotapanna, he would have eliminated Sakaya Ditti, identity view, in which case he does not regard the aggregates as self or as belonging to self, or Sakadagamin or Anagamin. So here they asked him whether he is Arahant. "Yes, friends," the Venerable Dasaka replied, and he approached the Venerable Khemaka and delivered his message. The Venerable Khemaka replied, "These 5 aggregates of attachment have been spoken of by the Blessed One, that is, the body aggregate of attachment, the feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, aggregates of attachment. I do not regard anything among these 5 aggregates of attachment as self or as belonging to self. Yet, I am not an arahant, one whose asavas are destroyed. Friends, the notion I am has not yet vanished in me in relation to these 5 aggregates of attachment. But I do not regard anything among them as this I am. Here he is saying that he does not have this Sakaya Ditti. Then the Venerable Dasaka approached the elder monks and reported what the Venerable Khemaka had said. They replied, "Come, friend Dasaka, approach the monk Khemaka and say to him, the elders say to you, friend Khemaka, when you speak of this I am, what is it that you speak of as I am? Do you speak of body as I am, or do you speak of I am apart from body? Similarly, do you speak of feeling, perception, volition, consciousness as I am, or do you speak of I am apart from these aggregates? When you speak of this I am, friend Khemaka, what is it that you speak of as I am?" "Yes, friends," the Venerable Dasaka replied. And he approached the Venerable Khemaka and delivered his message. And the Venerable Khemaka said, "Enough, friend Dasaka, why keep running back and forth? Bring me my staff, friend. I'll go to the elder monks myself." Then the Venerable Khemaka, leaning on his staff, approached the elder monks, exchanged greetings with them, and sat down to one side. So you see, this Venerable Khemaka, they asked him so many questions, and he got fed up. So even though he was very sick, he took his tongkat, his walking stick, and made a great effort and walked to them. The elder monks then said to him, "Friend Khemaka, when you speak of this I am, what is it that you speak of as I am?" They repeated the question as before. And he said, "Friends, I do not speak of body as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from body. I do not speak of feeling as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from feeling. Similarly with perception, volition and consciousness. Friends, although the notion I am has not yet vanished in me in relation to these 5 aggregates subject to clinging, still I do not regard anything among them as this I am. Suppose, friends, there is the scent of a blue, red or white lotus. Would one be speaking rightly if one would say, the scent belongs to the petals, or the scent belongs to the stalk, or the scent belongs to the pistils? No, friend. And how, friends, should one answer if one is to answer rightly?" And the elder said, "Answering rightly, friend, one should answer, the scent belongs to the flower. So too, friends, I do not speak of body as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from body. Similarly, I do not speak of feeling as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from feeling. Similarly with perception, volition and consciousness. Friends, although the notion I am has not yet vanished in me in relation to these 5 aggregates of attachment, still I do not regard anything among them as this I am. Friends, even though a noble disciple has abandoned the 5 lower fetters, still in relation to the 5 aggregates of attachment, there lingers in him a residual conceit I am, a desire I am, an underlying tendency I am that has not yet been uprooted. Sometime later, he dwells contemplating rise and fall, or rise and cessation, or birth and death of the 5 aggregates of attachment. Such is body, such its origin, such its passing away. Similarly, such is feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, such their origin, such their passing away. As he dwells thus contemplating rise and fall in the 5 aggregates of attachment, the residual conceit I am, the desire I am, the underlying tendency I am, that had not yet been uprooted, this comes to be uprooted. Suppose, friends, a cloth has become soiled and stained, and its owners give it to a laundryman. The laundryman would scour it evenly with cleaning salt lye or cow dung, and rinse it in clean water. Even though that cloth would become pure and clean, it would still retain a residual smell of cleaning salt, lye or cow dung that had not yet vanished. The laundryman would then give it back to the owners. The owners would put it in a sweet-scented casket, and the residual smell of cleaning salt, lye or cow dung that had not yet vanished would vanish. So too, friends, even though a noble disciple has abandoned the 5 lower factors, still in relation to the 5 aggregates of attachment, there lingers in him a residual conceit, I am, a desire, I am, an underlying tendency, I am, that has not yet been uprooted. As he dwells contemplating rise and fall in the 5 aggregates of attachment, the residual conceit, I am, the desire, I am, the underlying tendency, I am, that had not yet been uprooted. This comes to be uprooted. Stop here for a moment. So here he's saying that he is actually an anagamin, and because he has abandoned the 5 lower factors, and yet he still has this residual conceit, this mana, I am, that has not been uprooted. So he says he has to continue observing or contemplating the 5 aggregates, their nature and how they originate and how they pass away, contemplating impermanence in the 5 aggregates. Then slowly one day the I am is uprooted. And he gives a very good simile. It's that a dirty piece of cloth is sent to a laundryman. The laundryman cleans it and gives it back to the owner. And when the owner receives it, it still has a little bit of smell. So he puts it in a box with a lot of sweet-smelling flowers and perfume and all that. And then he closes the box. And then over a period of time, the cloth would imbibe, would soak up the sweet smell, the perfume, and later its nasty odor would go away. So in the same way, this I am is that nasty odor that slowly will disappear. And this was said, the elder monk said to the Venerable Khemaka, we did not ask our questions in order to trouble the Venerable Khemaka, but we thought that the Venerable Khemaka would be capable of explaining, teaching, proclaiming, establishing, disclosing, analyzing, and elucidating the Blessed One's teaching in detail. And the Venerable Khemaka has explained, taught, proclaimed, established, disclosed, analyzed, and elucidated the Blessed One's teaching in detail. This is what the Venerable Khemaka said. Elated, the elder monks delighted in the Venerable Khemaka's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of 60 elder monks and of the Venerable Khemaka were liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. So this Venerable Khemaka is a great anagamin. He can explain so well that the 60 of the elder monks, they also attain arahanthood. So possibly they had also attained some stage of aryahood, but when they heard this teaching, then they were liberated. This is the Venerable Khemaka. You notice the monks, 60 of them who heard the teaching, they attained arahanthood. And Venerable Khemaka, who taught the teaching, he also attained arahanthood. Because in the suttas, the Buddha says there are 5 occasions, only 5 occasions when a monk attains liberation. One is when he's listening to the Dhamma, pure Dhamma. And second is when he's teaching the Dhamma. Third is when he's repeating the Dhamma. Fourth is when he's reflecting on the Dhamma. And fifth only during meditation. So you see, out of 5 occasions when an arahant attains liberation, 4 have to do with the Dhamma. It shows how important the Dhamma is. In fact, you find in the suttas and the Vinaya, most of the monks who attain liberation, they attained it when they listen to the Dhamma. But of course, according to the Buddha's discourse, the precondition is that they must have the 4 jhanas. If they already have the 4 jhanas, their mind is very clear, then they listen to this type of discourse. Or like what we read yesterday, the Anatta Lakkhana discourse, then they will attain liberation. So this sutta is a bit amusing. Actually, these elder monks, they had a lot of respect for this Venerable Khemaka. They wanted to learn from him because he's so good at explaining the Dhamma. So they sent this young monk to go and ask him all these questions. Probably they thought, because there's so many of them and they are all senior monks, it's not proper that they go to him. So they sent the young monk. The young monk kept going back and forth so many times until this Venerable Khemaka got fed up. Bring my walking stick, I'll go myself. So the next sutta is 22.93. This sutta also gives a very beautiful simile. At Savatthi, the Buddha said, "Monks, suppose there was a mountain river sweeping downwards, flowing into the distance with a swift current. If on either bank of the river, kasa grass or kusa grass were to grow, it would overhang it. If rushes, reeds or trees were to grow, they would overhang it. If a man, being carried along by the current, should grasp the kasa grass, it would break off and he would thereby meet with calamity and disaster. If he should grasp the kusa grass, it would break off and he would thereby meet with calamity and disaster. If he should grasp the rushes, reeds or trees, they would break off and he would thereby meet with calamity and disaster. So too monks, the uninstructed ordinary folk, who does not see Aryans, etc., who is not learned or trained in the Aryan Dhamma, regards body as self, or self as possessing body, or body as in the self, or self as in the body. That body of his disintegrates, and he thereby meets with calamity and disaster. He regards feeling, similarly, perception, volition, consciousness as self, or self as possessing the aggregates, or the aggregates as in the self, or self as in the aggregates. The aggregates of his disintegrates, and he thereby meets with calamity and disaster. What do you think, monks? Is body permanent or impermanent? And they say impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent, suffering or happiness? And they say suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is suffering, subject to change, impermanent, fit to be regarded as this is mine, this I am, this is myself? And they say no. Similarly, with feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, he asks them one by one. And then they say, the answer as before. Then he says, when Aryan disciple sees this, understands this, then he becomes disenchanted, and from being disenchanted, becomes dispassionate with the 5 aggregates, and he becomes liberated. So the simile here is a very beautiful simile. This man is swept along the river, and in desperation he is drowning. So he grasps at anything by the bank of the river. So happens there are 5 things there: the kasa grass, the kusa grass, the rushes, the reeds and trees. And all of these fragile, when he pulls at them, they just give way. And he's swept along by the current and he drowns. So this simile is a very good simile, because we are swept along by the current of life. We flow in the stream of life, and we also, in the same way, we hold on to our 5 aggregates, just like this man trying to grasp at the 5 things. So we are grasping at our 5 aggregates, hoping they will be maintained, hoping that they will give us happiness. But instead, because they are impermanent, so they will, just like the reeds will break off, the grass will break off. So as we hold on to the 5 aggregates, they slowly disintegrate. They become sick and die. So just like the man is drowned, so we will also die. Lifetime after lifetime, we hold on to the 5 aggregates, and we swept along the river of life. So this is a very beautiful simile to make us understand how we are swept along this river of life. 22.94 at Savatthi, Buddha said, "Monks, I do not quarrel with the world. Rather, it is the world that quarrels with me. A proponent of the Dhamma does not quarrel with anyone in the world. Of that which the wise in the world agree upon as not existing, I too say that it does not exist. And of that which the wise in the world agree upon as existing, I too say that it exists. And what is it, monks, that the wise in the world agree upon as not existing, of which I too say that it does not exist? Body that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change. This the wise in the world agree upon as not existing, and I too say that it does not exist. Similarly, feeling, perception, volition, consciousness that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change. This the wise in the world agree upon as not existing, and I too say that it does not exist. That, monks, is what the wise in the world agree upon as not existing, and of which I too say that it does not exist." Stop here for a moment now. So here the Buddha is saying that firstly he does not quarrel with the world. The world quarrels with him. One who teaches the Dhamma does not quarrel with anyone in the world. So from this sutta you can understand because there were a lot of external sects in India at that time. So when the Buddha became enlightened, there were already at least 6 famous teachers. And when the Buddha taught the Dhamma, it was very different from what they were teaching. So because they could not understand his Dhamma, they criticized him, they talked bad about him, they were jealous of him and all this. So because of all that backbiting, he says that they quarrel with him, but he does not quarrel with them. So you can see actually all holy men, if they start to teach actually, and what they teach is different, so it's very dangerous. Like Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, he taught, his teachings were quite good, but because he was different from what was being taught at that time, a lot of people could not accept what he taught. So in the end they crucified him. He died trying to teach something good. So in the same way, the Buddha also, a lot of people talk bad about him, were jealous of him and all that. So that's the risk when you try to teach the true Dhamma and it is contradictory to what others teach. And sometimes, like the Buddha, when he teaches the Dhamma, he has to contradict what the other teachers say, and he has to criticize what the others say, and he has to point out. Like there's one sutta where the Buddha says that fool Makali Gosala Putta, he leads so many people to the woeful plains of rebirth. Just like a fish trap, what do you call it, pukat now, where they have all these stakes, the bamboo, and the fish go along and they are led along until they go into a trap, and they enter the trap and they cannot come out. So in the same way, the Buddha said, this Makali Gosala Putta, that fool is bringing a lot of people into the woeful plains, and they won't be able to come out from there for a long time. So a lot of people don't study suttas enough. They think, oh, the Buddha is such a nice person, doesn't criticize people, doesn't talk bad and all that. But it's not. The Buddha is so straightforward. He dares to call a fool a fool. That's why he says he does not quarrel with people, but people quarrel with him. So he says the wise people in the world agree that you cannot find a being with the 5 aggregates that are eternal, that will live forever. And he says he agrees with that. And what is it, monks, that the wise in the world agree upon as existing, of which I too say that it exists? Body that is impermanent, suffering and subject to change. This the wise in the world agree upon as existing, and I too say that it exists. Similarly, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness that is impermanent, suffering and subject to change. This the wise people in the world agree upon as existing, and I too say that it exists. That, monks, is what the wise in the world agree upon as existing, and of which I too say that it exists. So here the Buddha is saying, he agrees with the wise people in the world that the 5 aggregates, that means a being, body and mind, all of them will change. They give us suffering. They depend on conditions. There is, monks, a world phenomenon in the world to which the Tathagata has awakened and broken through. Having done so, he explains it, teaches it, proclaims it, establishes it, discloses it, analyzes it, elucidates it. And what is it, that world phenomenon in the world to which the Tathagata has awakened and broken through? Body, monks, is a world phenomenon in the world to which the Tathagata has awakened and broken through. Having done so, he explains it, teaches it, proclaims it, establishes it, discloses it, analyzes it, elucidates it. When it is being thus explained and elucidated by the Tathagata, if anyone does not know and see, how can I do anything with that foolish worldling, blind and sightless, who does not know and does not see? Similarly, with feeling, perception, volition and consciousness is a world phenomenon in the world to which the Tathagata has awakened and broken through. Having done so, he explains it, teaches it, proclaims it, establishes it, discloses it, analyzes it, elucidates it. When it is being thus explained and elucidated by the Tathagata, if anyone does not know and see, how can I do anything with that foolish worldling, blind and sightless, who does not know and does not see? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying, he teaches the 5 aggregates to the world. But there are some people who are foolish, blind and sightless. They have much dust in their eyes, and they do not understand. They don't see, they don't know. So he says he cannot do anything with them. It's not true that the Buddha can teach everyone, can help everyone to become enlightened. No, the Buddha says he only teaches tameable men, only wise men. People who are not wise enough, when they hear the Dhamma, they cannot understand because they have their hindrances are too thick. The 5 hindrances. The Buddha says we are foolish, we are stupid because of the 5 hindrances. And when we eliminate the 5 hindrances through meditation, when we attain one-pointedness of mind, when our mind becomes focused, then the 5 hindrances melt away. Then we see things as they clearly are. Yatta Bhuta Jnana Darsana. Then only we can understand the Dhamma. So the Buddha says, foolish people cannot understand the Dhamma. Monks, just as a blue, red or white lotus is born in the water and grows up in the water, but having risen up above the water, it stands unsullied by the water. So too the Tathagata was born in the world and grew up in the world, but having overcome the world, he dwells unsullied by the world. So the Buddha gives a simile like the lotus flower. He was an ordinary person in the world, but having become enlightened, he has transcended the world. So this sutta, the beginning part is quite interesting. He says that the world quarrels with him, the Buddha says. He does not quarrel with the world. So that's why a lot of teachers, they don't have the courage to speak the truth. Because when you speak the truth, you antagonize people who speak differently. So some monks, they like to be popular. They just teach those things that people like to hear. The next sutta is 22.95. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Ayodhya on the bank of the river Ganges. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus. Monks, suppose that this river Ganges were carrying along a great lump of foam. A man with good sight would inspect it, ponder it, and carefully investigate it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in a lump of foam? So too monks, whatever kind of body there is, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk inspects it, ponders it, and carefully investigates it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in body? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is giving a simile for our body. You must remember, the Buddha spoke this sutta about 2,500 years ago, when science was not advanced. Yet the Buddha, because of his psychic power, he could see that our body is made up of what? Cells. Sipao cells. And these cells are born and die. Very quickly they pass away. So they're very similar to this lump of foam. When you put fat into water, you stir it, you get a lot of foam. But when you look carefully, these bubbles in the foam, they burst and new ones are formed and old ones will burst. They keep bursting and new ones will form. So in the same way, our body, the cells, there are trillions of cells in our body, and they are dying and being born, dying and being born. As we eat food, as we take nutriment, then it makes new cells, and the old cells will die. And then we keep eating and we sustain our body. That's why the Buddha says that the body is sustained by food. Without food, the body will die. The old cells will die and no new cells are created. So we have to keep on taking food. And the interesting thing is the Buddha says all beings subsist on food. Not only human beings. Devas also have to eat. Ghosts also have to eat. Animals have to eat. Hell beings also have to eat. All beings have to eat to sustain the body. And all beings have a body. It's just that there are certain, like spirits, we cannot see. But the fact that we cannot see doesn't mean that they don't have a body. They have a body. It's only that their body is fine, so we cannot see with the human eyes. So this simile is a very good simile for the body. The body is just like a foam. If you look into the body, you cannot find anything solid inside the body, just like in the foam. Can you find anything that is permanent, that is unchanging? You cannot find. So our body also made up of all these cells, sipao. There's always dying and new ones arise. And there's nothing inside there that is permanent or unchanging. Suppose, monks, that in the autumn, when it is raining and big raindrops are falling, a water bubble arises and bursts on the surface of the water. A man with good sight would inspect it, ponder it, and carefully investigate it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in a water bubble? So too, monks, whatever kind of feeling there is, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk inspects it, ponders it, and carefully investigates it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in feeling? I'll stop here for a moment. This is another classic example. The Buddha says feeling is just like the water bubble that arises on the surface of a pond or a lake when the raindrops fall on it. Why this example is so good is because when the raindrops fall on the water and the bubble forms, it is very similar to what happens at our six senses. The six senses, we are impinged by contact from the six external sense objects. For example, sights will impinge on our eye, and when the form impinges on our eye, there's contact, and then feeling arises. Similarly, a sound comes to our ear when somebody says something to us, and then we hear that sound contacts our ear, then a feeling arises. Similarly, with smell, taste, touch, and thoughts, whenever there is contact, a feeling arises. So that's why this simile is so good. When the water contacts, when the raindrop contacts the water surface, immediately a bubble forms, just like the feeling. And the Buddha wants us to understand that this feeling only lasts for a short while and then it will burst. So similarly, our feelings actually last for a short while. But sometimes it appears long to us. Why? Because we think about it. For example, somebody says something nasty to us, immediately an unpleasant feeling arises. If we don't think about it, it will just subside. But the problem with many of us is that we start thinking about it, and then we get annoyed. Why should he say such a thing to me? I have been so good to him. I did him so many favors and all that. And you keep thinking and it multiplies. These thoughts multiply. So the feeling persists. And if you continue thinking about it, at night it will still persist until you cannot sleep. You have a sleepless night because you are angry. So actually feeling, if you don't think about it, it just arises and passes away. Suppose monks, that in the last month of the hot season, at high noon, a shimmering mirage appears. A man with good sight would inspect it, ponder it, and carefully investigate it. And it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in a mirage? So too monks, whatever kind of perception there is, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk inspects it, ponders it, and carefully investigates it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in perception? And stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha gives a simile of the hot season. During the hot season, during noon time, it's very hot, and somehow the conditions make a mirage appear. And then when you look at the mirage, this mirage is like an example I can think of is like a person is in the desert, he's lost in the desert, and he's walking for many days without water, without food. So his mind becomes overheated. So he's looking for a place where there is water, where there's an oasis with trees and all that. So he starts imagining. He sees an oasis with a lake and trees and all that. And then he rushes towards it. When he reaches it, he finds it disappeared. It's created by the mind. So in this way, this mirage is mind created. So in the same way, when there is contact at our six sense doors, feeling arises, followed by perception, and this perception is created by habit. For example, if a person sees somebody of the opposite sex is attractive, then firstly, when you see, nice feeling arises, followed by the perception that this person is very attractive. But this perception of somebody being attractive is not necessarily true to somebody else who sees that person may not look attractive. Or you perceive a certain color, but it's not necessary that somebody else will see the same color as you, especially if one of you is color blind. So it is somehow insubstantial, it is not absolute. Suppose monks, that a man needing hardwood, seeking hardwood, wandering in search of hardwood, would take a sharp axe and enter a forest. There he would see the trunk of a large plantain tree, straight, fresh, without a fruit bud core. He would cut it down at the root, cut off the crown, and unroll the coil. As he unrolls the coil, he would not find even softwood, let alone hardwood. A man with good sight would inspect it, ponder it, and carefully investigate it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in the trunk of a plantain tree? So too monks, whatever kind of volition there are, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk inspects it, ponders it, and carefully investigates it. As he investigates it or them, it appears to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in volition? stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is giving the simile of a banana tree. Plantain plant here is a banana tree with volition. When we exercise volition, we make a decision to do this or not to do that. Then you have the feeling, I want this, I don't want this. You think there is an I inside that makes the decision. But actually there is no I. Just like a robot. If you make a robot, you have a good computer inside so that it automatically responds to certain situations. And if somebody doesn't understand, he thinks there's a being inside that robot. So we are quite a perfect robot. Our computer works automatically. So the Buddha gives this simile of this banana tree. If any one of you is a kampong boy like me, you know when you chop down a banana tree, usually after you harvest the fruit, we chop down the banana tree, right? So when you chop down the banana tree, you have banana trees here. You find, if you don't understand, this man is looking for hardwood, and he sees this banana tree, he doesn't understand, he's looking for hardwood in the banana tree. So he starts peeling the layers of the banana tree because the banana tree is quite peculiar, it's got layers. So when he peels a banana tree right to the center, he doesn't find any wood at all. There's no wood. Don't talk about hardwood. So in the same way, the Buddha says, when we examine either our body or our mind, when we make a decision, we think, I make a decision. When we start investigating whether the mind or the body, there is nothing inside us that is permanent, that's unchanging, that you can call that I. So the Buddha says in the same way, just like inside the banana tree there's no hardwood. So in the same way, there's no person inside, no something solid you can call a self that makes a decision. Suppose monks that a magician or a magician's apprentice would display a magical illusion at a crossroads. A man with good sight would inspect it, ponder it, and carefully investigate it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in a magical illusion? So too monks, whatever kind of consciousness there is, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk inspects it, ponders it, and carefully investigates it, and it would appear to him to be void, hollow, insubstantial. For what substance could there be in consciousness? I'll stop here for a moment. So here, consciousness conjures up dream. Every time we see ourselves, one lifetime after another lifetime, like a tai hei, a show, just like our dreams. Every time we dream, we see ourselves in that dream. Only when we wake up, then we realize it was only a dream. So in the same way, consciousness conjures up these dreams of us, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So the Buddha gives the simile of a magician. He creates an illusion. And if you don't understand, if you don't know he's a magician, you think it's real. The only thing, it takes some time to realize that it's just an illusion. So the Buddha says life is also an illusion, just like a dream, one lifetime after another. It's only that when we are inside the dream, we don't realize. So now we are in the dream of life, we don't realize that it's actually just a play of consciousness, what the Hindus call Maya. Illusion. Seeing thus monks, the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards body, revulsion towards feeling, revulsion towards perception, revulsion towards volition, revulsion towards consciousness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it's liberated. He understands, destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for the state of being. This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said, form is like a lump of foam, feeling like a water bubble. Perception is like a mirage. Volition is like a banana tree. and consciousness like an illusion. So explain the kinsman of the sun. Kinsman of the sun is a angirasa. However one may ponder it and carefully investigate it, it appears but hollow and void. When one views it carefully, with reference to this body, the one of broad wisdom has taught that with the abandoning of three things, one sees this body discarded. When vitality, heat and consciousness departs from this physical body, then it lies there cast away, food for others, without volition. Such is this continuum, this illusion, beguiler of fools. It is taught to be a murderer. Here no substance can be found. A monk with energy aroused should look upon the aggregates thus, whether by day or at night, comprehending, ever mindful. He should discard all the fetters and make a refuge for himself. Let him fare as with head ablaze, yearning for the imperishable state. That's the end. So here the Buddha says, when the body is discarded, three things leave the body. Vitality, means vital energy, heat, body heat, and consciousness. So sometimes the doctor says a person has died. He has not died as long as the body is warm. When a person really dies, then the body becomes cold. So here the Buddha says that life is an illusion. Fools are tricked. And these five aggregates are like a murderer. So the problem is with most people, our minds are muddled up. Our minds are not focused, blur blur as they say. So we go through life not seeing things clearly. And because our mind has tricked us, so we have these natural tendencies towards greed, hatred and delusion, and we don't see the consequence clearly. But when we learn the Dhamma and then we train our mind to focus, when our mind becomes focused, and then we see it differently. A person with a focused mind, he sees things very clearly. Then things become plain, so evident that we see things clearly, then we know what to do, and we have the strength of mind to do it. If your mind is blur, you don't have the strength. Not only that you can't see clearly, you don't have the strength to do what you should do also. Okay, another sutta, 22.96, Asavati. A certain monk came to see the Buddha, and then sitting to one side, that monk said to the Blessed One, "Venerable Sir, is there any body that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, and that will remain the same, just like eternity itself? Is there, Venerable Sir, any feeling, perception, volition, or consciousness that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, and that will remain the same, just like eternity itself?" And the Buddha said, "Monk, there is no body that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, and that will remain the same, just like eternity itself. There is no feeling, no perception, no volition, no consciousness that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, and that will remain the same, just like eternity itself." Let's stop here for a moment. A lot of us, a lot of people, out of ignorance, we like to believe that there is like a Kuan Yin Bodhisattva is permanently there, that will help us when we need help, or any master medicine Buddha or Amitabha Buddha or any God or anything that is any being, some super being that will help us when we need help. But the Buddha says that all beings will have to die one day. You cannot find a being that is eternal. Then the Blessed One took up a little lump of cow dung in his hand and said to that monk, "Monk, there is not even this much individual existence that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, and that will remain the same just like eternity itself. If there was this much individual existence that was permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, this living of the holy life for the complete destruction of suffering could not be discerned. But because there is not even this much individual existence that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change. Thus, living of the holy life for the complete destruction of suffering is discerned. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha is saying that there's nothing that is unchanging. Even a little lump of cow dung, so small, you cannot find any type of being or what, even so small, that has eternal life. The Buddha says, if there is, then there would not be this holy life that is taught for us to get out of samsara, for us to get out of the world. Because the world is full of suffering. There is nothing in the world that you can find permanent happiness. If there is something, or something even so small that would give you permanent happiness, then there's no need to get out of the world. Because there isn't. That's why the Buddha says this holy life is lived to get out of this samsara. And the Buddha said, in the past month, I was a head anointed Khattiya king. I had 84,000 cities, the chief of which was the capital Kusavati. I had 84,000 palaces, the chief of which was the palace named Dhamma. I had 84,000 halls with peaked roofs, the chief of which was the hall named the Great Array. I had 84,000 couches made of ivory, of hardwood, of gold and silver, decked with long-haired coverlets, embroidered with flowers, with choice spreads made of antelope hides, with red awnings overhead and red cushions at both ends. I had 84,000 bull elephants with golden ornaments and golden banners, covered with nets of golden thread, the chief of which was the royal bull elephant named Uposatha. I had 84,000 steeds with golden ornaments and golden banners, covered with nets of golden thread, the chief of which was the royal steed named Valahaka. I had 84,000 chariots with golden ornaments and golden banners, covered with nets of golden thread, the chief of which was the chariot named Vijayanta. I had 84,000 jewels, the chief of which was the jewel gem. I had 84,000 women, the chief of which was Queen Subhadra. I had 84,000 vessels of the Khattiya caste, the chief of whom was the commander gem. I had 84,000 cows with feathers of fine jute and milk pails of bronze. I had 84,000 kotis of garments made of fine linen, of fine silk, of fine wool, of fine cotton. I had 84,000 plates on which my meals were served both in the morning and in the evening. Of those 84,000 cities, monk, there was only one city in which I resided at that time, the capital Kusavati. Of those 84,000 palaces, there was only one palace in which I resided at that time, the palace named Dhamma. Of those 84,000 halls with peaked roof, there was only one hall with peaked roof in which I resided at that time, the hall named the Great Array. Of those 84,000 couches, there was only one couch that I used at that time, one made either of ivory, or of hardwood, or of gold, or of silver. Of those 84,000 elephants, there was only one elephant that I rode at that time, the royal bull elephant named Uposatha. Of those 84,000 steeds, there was only one steed that I rode at that time, the royal steed named Valahaka. Of those 84,000 chariots, there was only one chariot that I rode at that time, the chariot named Vijayanta. Of those 84,000 women, there was only one woman who waited on me at that time, either a Khattiya maiden or a Velamika maiden. This Velamika is a maiden born of a Khattiya royal warrior clan and a Brahmin. Of those 84,000 kotis of garments, there was only one pair of garments that I wore at that time, one made either of fine linen or of fine silk or of fine wool or of fine cotton. Of those 84,000 plates, there was only one plate from which I ate at most, a measure of rice with a suitable curry. Thus, monk, all these conditioners have passed, ceased, changed. So impermanent are conditioners, monks. Conditioners here is sankhara. So unstable, so unreliable. It is enough, monks, to feel revulsion towards all conditioners, enough to become dispassionate towards them, enough to be liberated from them. The end of the sutta. These conditioners here refers to things in the world. All the things in the world are conditioners as well as conditioned things. So here the Buddha, sometimes he likes to think back about this life when he was a wheel-turning king. He was a universal monarch. He was king of the whole earth. And that life was a very beautiful life. He enjoyed it so much. So he sometimes was a bit sentimental about it. Think about it. So much so that when the Buddha was about to pass away, he went to a particular place. And Ananda didn't understand why he went to such a ulu, way out place. And the Buddha says, it's because this used to be his capital when he was a universal monarch, king of the whole earth. This was his capital called Kusavati. He resided there, so he wanted to go back there and pass away. So you see, the Buddha says, life is so impermanent. Such a beautiful life also has gone by like a dream. So in the same way, if we one day we have this psychic ability to know our past lives, then we look at our past lives, it's just like one dream after another, one dream after another. But when you are in a particular life, you think it's so important, everything in that life is so important. But when it goes by, then you realize there was nothing that was important. All has to become cold. Everything has to become cold. So I think I'll stop here for a moment. Anything to discuss? Oh, this word Kong comes from the Sanskrit word sunyata. This word sunyata, when the Buddha says empty, it means just like the concept of anatta, it does, that there is no thing that is unchanging, because everything is in a state of flux and keep changing and keep changing. So it is empty of a self, empty of something that is permanent, that is unchanging, that is a core. So since there is no such thing, that's why I say that it is empty. Or it's an Indian way of speaking, just like they shake their head. It's a way of speaking. So sometimes they say 500, sometimes they say 84,000. Yeah, because it's an Indian tradition to use that this way of describing, meaning a lot. Meaning many thousand, not necessarily 84,000, many thousands. I think the Buddha is saying that because there is nothing that is unchanging, that's eternal, so everything must go by. So when he talk about everything has to be impermanent, everything has to go by, then maybe he was a bit sentimental, and then he thought about his life, where he was so happy, and he was so famous and all that. Still that also has to go by. Because like imagine if you look into your past life and then you realize at one time you were a great king, of course you stand up in your mind, everything must go by. Even at that time, and I was such a great king, that also had to go by. The few similes that we've gone through just now actually are very striking, very, very good. But if you didn't have a teacher to explain to you, if you read the book yourself, it would be difficult to catch the meaning so clearly, and I like the contact. When I started learning the suttas, reading the suttas, many things also I didn't understand. But then I read through them, I think maybe got 10 times I've gone through the suttas, so that's why I become more familiar. And each time you read, you sort of make some notes. Those important points you underline. It's good to underline in pencil rather than pen, because sometimes certain things you underline you thought was important. Later you realize it's not so important. Then you can delete with the rubber. So when you listen like this, you have the advantage of a lot of years of experience. So you save on your time. I think for the Anagamin and Arahant, because they have attained 4 jhanas, their mind is very clear. Greed normally is identified with sensual pleasure, but not only sensual pleasure, because greed to be reborn in the formless world, greed to be born in the form realm, that is in the higher factors. That is still greed. That's why they are called the 5 lower factors. It's not a higher greed, it's a lower greed. Greed for the sensual pleasures, worldly pleasures. For example, if a person has a temper, if our mind is not developed, we have a big temper, it flares up easily. So when a person becomes a sakadagamin, the reduction is so much that it's very noticeable. He himself notices it, and other people also notice it. He does not flare up anymore, but he still has some anger inside, and it's not like the anagamin. Anagamin has totally suppressed it, or eliminated it. It's not mentioned. But you see, once a person has become an Arya, he becomes a changed person. He becomes a humble person, because he must become humble, because he does not see himself in the 5 aggregates, you see. Whereas, although generally a person who has attained jhana, the Buddha says, he has cut the passions. In other words, anger and lust, he does not possess. But because the root is still there, so when the conditions are right, actually this anger can come up, just like Devadatta. When the Buddha scolded him in front of all the assembly of monks, saying, liken him to spittle. Who do you think you are? You want to take my place as the leader of the Sangha? I say, you are like spittle. People spit out. Nobody wants. He got so angry, then he decided to want to kill the Buddha. They tried various ways to kill the Buddha. You see? So you see, the anger can arise. Also in the sutta is mentioned that there was a certain place, the Buddha mentioned, that it was all burnt out. And the Buddha said that was burnt out because long time ago there was an ascetic who cultivated until he had psychic power. And then the villagers did something that made him totally angry, and he used his psychic power to burn the whole village and kill all of them. So you see, even though you attain jhana and psychic power and all that, if you are not an Arya, it's still very dangerous. That's why there are some teachers, they say if their disciple has attained psychic power, they ask him to stop it, get rid of it, because the wisdom level has not come up yet. And then the psychic power come up, the ego will come up. When the ego comes up, it's very dangerous. A lot of people, just like they practice mantras, and then they find there's some power, and the ego will arise. Or similarly with meditation also. If the wisdom factor is not balanced, then they have some psychic power, and the ego, instead of decreasing, will increase. It's not exactly that he broke his precept, it's that because of the ego. So when the Prince Ajatasattu offered him 500 dishes every morning and night, he accepted. So that was one contributory factor. Another one was when he asked to become the leader of the Sangha, and the Buddha told him off. So he got so annoyed. I think when he decided to kill the Buddha, I think he must have lost all his psychic power, because the mind starts working at that time. His mind becomes agitated as he has to plan how to kill the Buddha and all that. For a person to remain with his psychic power, and his mind has to be very tranquil. It comes from here, the Buddha's words. That's why I constantly have to study the Buddha's words. A lot of people make the mistake, they only want to meditate, they don't want to study the Buddha's words. So they can't handle the ego. This is the wisdom factor here. This is actually studying the Buddha's words, is the vipassana. Contemplation of the Buddha's words. That will bring you wisdom. Of course, the higher the wisdom, if you have more samadhi, the more samadhi you have, combined with vipassana, contemplation of the Buddha's words, then will give you more wisdom. Okay, we stop here for tonight.